If you're looking for a 2-fabric quilt block that looks more complicated than it actually is, then you should try the 9-patch star. And today I'm going to show you how to make a 5-inch version of this. Welcome to Epida Studio. My name is Elizabeth and I help you make beautiful things with quilting, patchwork, and embroidery. So the 9-patch star is a quilt block that looks more complicated than it is to make. It has this 9-patch in the middle, but it looks kind of complicated with these fancy corners on it. But once you break it down, you can see that it's not actually complicated to make. So today I'm going to show you how to make a 5-inch finished block. This block only uses 2 different fabrics, a light and a dark, and you can see I'm using this kind of beige light brown color and this bright blue color. So let's get started. So to make this block, you are only going to need 1.5-inch squares, and you're going to need 17 of your light fabric and 16 of your dark fabric. And those are the only pieces that we need to cut out. And then the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take 8 of each of those, use these, put the rest of them to one side for now, and we're going to make half square triangles using the easiest ever method. And I recommend the easiest ever method because these ones are pretty small, and so this is a good technique to work for that. However, if you have another method of making half square triangles that you prefer to use, then feel free to use that. Of course, that will affect the sizes that you need to cut of your fabric. So to make the half square triangles using the easiest ever method, we're going to put our 2 squares right sides together, one of each color, and then stitch right on the diagonal line, then trim off the excess corner and press it open. And you should end up with a half square triangle that is 1.5 inches square. Now, if you want to see more details of how to do that, then there's a link below. I have another tutorial that goes into step by step all the details of that, but it is the easiest ever method because it's easy to do and there's no fancy math that you need to get the right size. But once you've done that, you are going to end up with 8 half square triangles that are 1.5 inches square. So they will look like this. And then once you have these made, we're ready to jump into the block construction. So in this block, we're going to start off with a little 9-patch in the middle. So the light fabric goes right in the center, and then the dark fabric goes north, south, east, and west around that. And then the light fabric goes in the corners. So here is our little 9-patch. And then beyond the 9-patch, we're going to put our half square triangles on the corners. And then the dark fabric. So it's like a little arrow pointing out from the block. And then at right in the middle, north, south, east, and west, we have our light fabric. So you can see it's a lot of little pieces to lay out, but once it's laid out, then just take a minute to confirm the orientation of everything. One thing to check is to see that you have light, light, light on the sides in the middle. Make sure that these are all arrows that are pointing out from the middle. But you can see it's just 5 pieces across and 5 pieces down. And we're going to join these pieces into rows. So I'm going to sew these together into a row, and these together into a row. And I'm going to press the seams so that these seams are pressed away from the half square triangle, And that means that this seam will be away from the half square triangle and away from the dark fabric. So that's going to be our general guidelines. If there's a half square triangle, press away from that. In this middle section, we're pressing away from the dark fabric. So that's not the way we'd normally press with the dark fabric. Normally we'd press to the dark fabric, but in this situation, that will help it line up with these seams away from the half square triangles. Now that our rows are done, we're just going to lay it out again and take another look to make sure that everything is in the right orientation. Look for the arrows in the corners. And because we pressed our seams that way away from the half square triangles and towards the dark fabric, then all the seams are going to line up really nicely. It's going to make it pretty easy when we join our rows together. We can see that this block looks kind of tall, it's kind of stretched. That's just because it's been joined this way and not the other way. So it will balance out and be more square once it's joined together. Now, because these pieces are really small, we do need to have accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if you have trouble with that, I do have another video that gives tips for getting an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you can check that. I have the link for that below. But all we're going to do now is just join our rows together. So once the rows are joined together, then the block is finished. And it will be 5.5 inches square at this point. So it's 5 inches in your finished project. So you can see the little 9 patch in the middle, and that's what gives this block its name. If you want to do more little 5-inch quilt blocks, I have a whole playlist, or you can click the link below to go to posts that have written instructions with pictures. You can find this and more at my website, epidastudio.com.